Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer, and I'm your host for this hour. No matter where you are joining us from across the world, we're so glad that you have made it here and hope you stick around for the next bit to hear all the way through the end of this show. We've got a special guest that I'm so excited for you to hear her story of real life, hope, and recovery. So stick with us right after this message. We are live
Stop Facebook.
where a number of people have
The opportunity to share.
She's one of our own. It has been
They aren't like
parts of your story that's awesome. You found healing. You found,
until I got so bad.
can't wait for her to share it. I hate to know the different aspects of your story and what. Awesome.
Right.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited for you all to be here today, and so excited for our special guest, special storyteller here today. Melissa is not only a good friend of mine, coworker, but she is a world changer in her own right and has been doing so for years. And I'm so excited for her to get to share how life and her challenges and different things have brought her to the space that she's in today in making a difference in the lives of others. So, Melissa, thank you so much for your time and willingness to be here today on Recovery Stories.
Well, thank you so much, and I love you. I adore you. Our paths have crossed, and it's always in perfect divine order, always. And to start, just going back to the beginning of my recovery, I started using when I was probably about 12 or 13. It was just at that time it was, again, I'm going back to an era where the families had the liquor and the cabinets and everything was out and about. So my first drink was gin because it was easy to fill up with water. That's what I did. So that's how I started doing it. And my very first time that I ever drank, I got violently sick, but yet I wanted more. And so it's, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. It's like, well, this was bad, but what about the next time? So I had a relatively easy childhood. I have a very loving family, a really great family. To my knowledge, I'm the only one in my immediate family. And when I say my immediate family, I have a sister, brother, mother, father, some cousins and I'm the only person who is in recovery. So I didn't know at the time that I was an addict. I just thought I was having fun. I didn't understand what that meant. I, did very well in high school. I did very well, just in school in general. I actually went to University of Florida, did very well at University of Florida. And my drug of choice kind of shifted a little bit from the alcohol to something else. But it wasn't enough to make my life unmanageable, or so I thought. And so, I love to think of recovery as a bit of whack-a-mole. It's like I work on one thing and then something else comes up. And that's very true even from the beginning. It was, well, I thought I had a problem with this, so I put that down, and then this came up, and that happens even today. And I have many years in recovery, so I always liken that to a whack-a-mole, and I, it was towards the end of my college that I I got into a car accident, and my father is a doctor, and so I was prescribed medications, and that was it for me. It was again, and please understand, I don't want to focus on substance because it's not about substance.
Mm.
I'm just sharing with you so that individuals can relate, based on what their substances or their drug of choice was.
Yeah.
And so, that was it for me. I immediately, I like the feeling, I like the way that it made me feel. I was I struggled for many years with an eating disorder. It helped me not to eat, so I thought, oh, this was the panacea, and yet I could still function, or so I thought. And as time went on, I realized that, well, it's amazing that we can, convince ourselves that we're not addicts, or that we only have a problem for a little bit of time or whatever. And so um, I was, unaware. And my very first recovery meeting, if you will, because I knew I had a problem. I knew I did. I knew in my heart, my soul, that I had a problem, but I didn't know where to go. And I ended up, I believe, to this day, it was like a Nar-Anon meeting or an Al-Anon meeting. And I remember sitting in a room, and there was probably about 8 women that were in there, and they were all crying, and they're talking about 3 C's. If anybody's ever been to Al-Anon, can't control it, I didn't cause it, all that stuff. And I can't cure it. And I looked around the room, and I thought, why are all these people crying? And I didn't get it. It took me years to understand what that meant, but I ended up in a place that I knew I needed help, but I didn't know how to ask for it, and I didn't know where to go. And so it all happened again in perfect divine order, where as I mentioned, my dad's a doctor, and I got to the point where I was doing what I needed to do to get more. And so one of his colleagues contacted him and said that I was doing something wrong. And they said, listen, we're not going to, press charges or do anything that is, reckless. And, if she goes and gets help. So I ended up at a detox, and that was my first experience. Ended up at a detox. That's where I heard the first message of recovery, and that was brought in by an H&I commitment. And I had no idea what that meant. And so I remember, they gave me a reading, and I was just bawling through the reading, because it was finally like I understood, or I didn't understand, but I heard what I had been feeling. Like someone had put it into words, what I had been feeling. And I had a lot of false starts in the beginning. I had a lot of false starts. I had a lot of, really nice treatment centers that I went to, and in the conclusion of that was that I would stay clean for a period of time, or sober for a period of time, and then the disease would start in my head, and again I would think, well, I can just do one, right? So one is too many, 1,000 never enough. And I would continuously do that, and it ended me up in the same place, same, it was like clockwork. I mean, I could, and that's the trickiness of our disease, is that it tells us that, if we do drink a beer, just hypothetically, if we drink something or take something, that we can do it one time. And maybe we can for like a day, maybe 2 days. But then it gets progressively worse even quicker. And so I ended up in several rehabs, all just very nice, very, very, very good rehabs. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't, I didn't have, I wasn't at my bottom. I thought I was at my bottom, and I always believed I was at my bottom, but my bottom really came when my parents said, we're done. Actually, my mom started going to an Al-Anon meeting, and I don't, I don't condone anything. I'm just saying that this is my story.
Yeah.
And it absolutely, completely, she was not in the dark anymore. She was not going to co-sign. She was not going to allow this to happen. And I ended up in a state-run facility. That was my last, in God willing, only place, my last place that I got clean. And I remember walking in there because I was, a bit of a prima donna. And I walked up there with my little rolling suitcase, and I had my Victoria's Secret robe, and, and I thought, I was, just like any other treatment center. And I remember the woman who was doing my intake, and she said, you are not bringing any of this in here. Here are your pajamas. Here are your, it was one step above a jail. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, there wasn't, there was not, Suboxone, because I've been clean a long time. So, or it wasn't readily available. Maybe it was available, but they certainly didn't give it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, basically was given like a couple of aspirin, here you go, good luck. And I stayed up for nights on end, just sitting on the end of my bed in this room with about 8 other women. And it was what I needed. It was exactly what I needed. I needed to be humbled. I needed to be reminded that this is not something that I want to do again. And so, if you're when you're hearing this and you have this opportunity to, get it the first time, I always pray. I mean, I really pray that people get it the first time. It was not my story. Again, as I mentioned, I had a lot of false starts, and but that was it for me. And from that point on, my life really took off, and early recovery was difficult. It was very difficult. I moved into a halfway house, and again, I have 18 years, so I moved into a halfway house where at the time you could smoke in the halfway house, which was disgusting, and people were fighting over cheese and all this kind of stuff, but I made the commitment. Like they said, 4 months. You have to be here for 4 months. I was there 4 months. I did not stay 4 months in a day. I stayed for 4 months. But because I knew that if I said something, I needed to complete it. And that was what I needed to do. So that was really important for me to keep my word, because I had been so unreliable. I had done nothing but, dip and dab and con and really I was a liar. I was a liar. I thought I was getting over on everybody, but the joke is that I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
They always knew. And so, but I stayed there exactly 4 months. If they'd asked me to stay 6 months, I would have stayed 6 months, 8 months. It didn't matter. That was their criteria. And so I stayed there. I spent the next 3 years of my recovery not being in a relationship, not because I didn't want to be in a relationship or have a companion, but because I wanted to take this time, because I knew in my soul that this was it for me. And I took 3 years to not be in any type of a romantic relationship so that I could work on myself. And let me tell you, it was not easy. It was not easy at all. I mean, sure, I looked at people and, oh, you know, it's a good looking person, or, you know, or a good looking guy or whatever. But I took it very, very, very seriously. And I attended a meeting. I mean, for my first 2 years, probably almost every day. By my third year, I was, you know, not as, I wasn't attending as regularly, but
Mm-hmm.
5 times a week, right? So a minimum 5 times a week. And I got a sponsor right away who was from New York. I believed that I needed a sponsor that was going to, you know, kind of kick me in the rear and not coastline anything. I have, as my recovery has changed, I have learned that I have found out that I needed someone different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had a total of 3 sponsors in my entire recovery. And so when I ended that relationship with my first sponsor, it was like breaking up. I felt, you know, you know, it was devastating for me. I was really devastated, but I was looking, I was at that point where I needed something different.
Sure.
And so, you know, I gravitated towards someone who was much more loving and kind, and I've worked all 12 steps several times. You know, I've worked them out of, I personally do, you know, an NA fellowship. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I go to any meetings. It doesn't matter. AA, CA, AA, you know, whatever it is. I don't care. It's just that's what found me, I should say. And I, you know, worked on that vigilantly. And again, as I mentioned, I stayed out of a relationship, and I'm telling you, it was the best thing for my recovery, because I learned to love myself, because there was nobody that I was going to attract in my life that was going to be healthy when I wasn't healthy.
That's right.
And so, you know, I really, really encourage individuals who are, you know, new in recovery to please take that time for yourself, please. Because it's a time that you're not going to get back.
Yeah.
It's a time that you will not, you know, early recovery was in some ways very difficult, but it was also very fun. Like I don't, you know, it was the first time in years I had those like really deep belly laughs that I hadn't had in a long time. And so it was, you know, it was it went back and forth. And but I knew that I needed to love myself before I got into a relationship. And I did get into a relationship. I ended up getting married 4 years after I got clean. We dated for about a year. I got married. I have a 14-year-old daughter now who is giving me fits, because just being 14 and a girl is challenging.
Sure.
So if you have children, I totally understand. You know, but those first couple of years were really both the best and the worst, if that makes any sense. And so, you know, and really in my first 30 to 60 days, I didn't know what to do with myself. You know, I was in a halfway house. You know, I'd been to treatment. You know, they keep you busy in treatment. You do groups and all this kind of stuff. And then I got out and I went into a halfway house, and I'm like, okay, now what do I do? You know, and I literally had to, for the first few months, I would write out each night, you know, what I was going to do the next day, meaning like per half an hour. Okay, I wake up at 8 o'clock. I make my bed. at 8:30. I'm just giving you examples. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to a meeting. At 9:30, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, or 10 o'clock, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Like, that's how simplistic it was for me. Like, I had to do that because I didn't know what to do, because my entire life was about using.
Mm.
And so, I mean, it's interesting because, my mom is extremely supportive of me continuing recovery and continuing to go to meetings. And even after all these years, I still go to meetings. I know it's very challenging right now. But I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. I sponsor, and for right now, we do 2 Zoom meetings a week with our entire family. And that's what's kept me afloat, because here in Florida, there aren't many places that you can go where there's open meetings. There are a few, but if you don't get there, half an hour or 45 minutes early, they limit the amount of people that are in there. So, and that has sustained me for this, this really crazy, crazy, crazy time right now, and so, but to get back to the earliest parts of my recovery, my mom has been my rock throughout this whole process.
Mm.
My father has interestingly believed that I just went through a hard time, and I'm like, okay. But yet I'm still in recovery and I'm still going to meetings, but he thought I just had a hard time. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because I don't need to please them anymore.
Mm.
I don't need to explain to him or to my mom what I'm doing. But that took a while for me to, come to that conclusion, because I was a people pleaser. I think a lot of us we're people pleasers. And so, I wanted to defend what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I made an amends very early on that I was not even ready to do. And I got an earful from my sponsor about it. But my first, year to 2 years, all I felt was just, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, that I put you through this, and that, I put my family through this. And because now that I'm on the other side, and thank heavens that even though, I have a challenging 14-year-old, because they just are challenging when they're girls at 14. She doesn't use, she doesn't drink, she doesn't do anything. But, in the event that she did, I would be devastated, and if she were 18, and this is just for me, if she were 18 or older and she used in my house, goodbye, goodbye, because I'm not going to sacrifice, my recovery for her, for her journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it is her journey. And that's taken me a little while to understand that was that this is her journey, no matter what it is. And but for right now, I don't have to worry about that, for today.
Yeah.
For today. And that's all I have, is just for today. Right?
Yeah.
And I wish I could say like some really spiritual, great things from the big book and from the basic text, but I'm not that type of person. I incorporate what I read as spiritual principles. And my spiritual principles come out, when I want to react, when I want to not be, or as I call it, snarky. And I can be that. No problem. I can get get there really quickly. And, but I have learned I've learned that the pause is where it's at. If I can pause, usually the cravings will pass. And I'm here to tell you, anyone who is new, long-term recovery, short-term recovery, doesn't matter. I still sometimes have thoughts of that. And that's usually when I'm not feeling, I'm just not feeling good. Or what's going on in the world right now. Doesn't mean I act on it. I put that pause in it. I put the pause in it and say, well, maybe not today.
Yeah.
Not today. I'll decide tomorrow.
That's a great principle when it comes to a lot of things, reacting in general. And, oh my gosh, so many times before I press that send email button or.
Now that's a funny story because I did that the other day where I was trying to practice the pause and I'm just sharing this because it just happened the other day and I accidentally hit send and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Okay. I mean, did I really just send that? And so, and that again is I learn a lesson every day. I learn more and more things about myself or remind myself, what's important and nothing that I have. And it's not about stuff. Okay. I've been blessed to have some stuff over the years, but in the beginning, I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything. I didn't have a car. My parents weren't going to support me. I was, working at I worked at a, like a print shop or something, just because I took the bus and, but that's what I needed. I needed to be humbled. And that was the most important lesson for me. And today, I can get a little, into myself and I have to be humbled. And when I have to be humbled, it's usually God humbles me.
Yes, ma'am. I'm right there with you.
Right?
For sure.
And it's and it doesn't always feel good. Life is not, it's not, rainbows and cute puppy dogs. Okay? It's not.
Yeah.
But I believe that my life is worth recovery. And so if you're struggling or if you feel that it's just, you're just not really sure how to go about doing it, I mean, and not to get clinical, but there is such a thing as pause, right? So we have post-acute withdrawal symptoms. And so sometimes our brains aren't working correctly, or it takes us a little while for them to kind of get in order, and that's the most dangerous time is usually that first 3 to 6 months is the most dangerous time. And because we want to fill ourselves up with stuff, listen, we clean up well really quickly. I was just meeting with somebody the other day and I shared that I was in recovery only because they shared that they were in recovery. He said, are you kidding? And I said, no, but we clean up and that's the easy part, right? That's the easy part.
All the outside stuff.
It's the inside stuff.
Yeah.
It's the inside stuff that I continuously work on. And I continuously, have to go within and realize that I ain't got this.
Yep.
I do not have this. I do not. I have one day at a time.
One of the neat things about recovery is, I think for me that I've seen is that, staying in the middle of the boat means that I open myself up to opportunities that keep me teachable, in that that radical acceptance. Radical acceptance being that I don't have this. I don't have the control. Control was only ever the illusion, you know, and I think it's, you know, surrounding ourselves with like-minded people who are trying to do the same thing, that help keep, they're the bumpers, you know, those bumper guards in our bowling lane, yeah, that help us stay on that straight and narrow. I wanted to jump back to something that you said early on, and that I kind of connected, I feel like, to your daughter as well, when focusing on family systems and family dynamics. You talked about when you finally got sober, your mom had gone to an Al-Anon meeting. She got her eyes opened a little bit and an understanding into, you know, how she could lovingly detach and say enough was enough. You know, I like to touch on that because I think it's important because we usually have family members watching. We also have addicts active in addiction that are watching. We have people who just got into treatment that are watching. And for anybody that's watching, I think all parties, it is important to understand what enabling is. And that no matter who we are as an addict, we have enablers, and it's usually our parents. If it's not our parents, it's our spouse, or a mixture of the both, or significant other, or best friends, or again, a mixture of all of those things. And you know, the natural course of action is the state of being that everyone feels that what loving is to the other person is to help make them feel safe, supported, comfortable, have their needs met. And what we find out in Al-Anon principles and you know, just the basic principles of what it's like to, you know, be in the life of an addict and how we can contribute or not contribute in unhealthy ways, is that enabling is just that. It's enabling the addict to continue life in a fashion that keeps them comfortable or keeps consequences from hitting them. And for so many of us, and when you said that, it was like, you know, a bell going off for me, because that's exactly what happened mid-treatment in my story, because I was not, when I went to treatment, doing the deal. Like the treatment center was about to kick me out like halfway through, because they're like, he doesn't want it. And, you know, this particular treatment center I went to, they are very big into, you know, if you're not invested, you know, you can go somewhere else. And so,
pack your bags.
That's right. And so they had a powwow with my parents, and they said, listen, we need you to be on board. And that on board means telling him he can't come home, no more money, and all that. And so that's just what they did. They had a powwow. Then they then had a powwow with me and said that. And I was like, oh, shit. You know, and it was like all of a sudden I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, but it was the weight that I needed, because I then realized that, oh wait, the jig is up. Like what am I gonna do? I mean, you know, and it was like, you know what, I think the best representation of someone's bottom is when they have no more options and no more choices. And when our loved ones are still giving us, making it possible for us to have options and choices, no matter what those are, that means that we're still going to use, it's still going to drink, still going to continue that down that destructive path. So I wanted to highlight that to say, I think that as addicts, it's important for us to understand that when our families finally find that peace of how to operate in a safe and healthy way with us, that, you know, at some point we have to learn and understand that they were doing that for our own good. For the family members that are watching, if you haven't heard that information yet, I encourage you to grab hold of that so tightly, do more research, find your local support group, and learn more, because there's a whole world out there for you that that same stuff. And you know, connecting that forward to what you were speaking about with your daughter in the future, and just having healthy boundaries with her, and what that would look like. I just think it's cool how you're mentioning, you know, our family did as good as they knew how to do with us, right? And then when the new knowledge is unveiled to us, we talk about the generational curses, generational trauma, and things like when new knowledge is revealed to us, when we know better, we do better. It's our responsibility, you know. And I feel like I see that you doing that with your daughter, and you know, instilling this healthy
it's all boundaries.
Yeah.
It's all boundaries. And really, I'm sure it was not comfortable for my mom. You know what I mean? Because, you know, if you recall at the beginning of our conversation, you know, to this day, you know, no one in my family has struggled with addiction. So they were very foreign to it. They didn't understand. They didn't know how to respond. They didn't know that they were contributing to the problem, unbeknownst to them. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that they didn't know. They didn't know.
You
So
wouldn't.
the family unit is so important.
So true.
And she, you know, and my mom, you know, she wanted to save her daughter.
Yeah.
And she just said, you know what? I don't know what to do, but this is what somebody suggested, so I'm going to do it. And she did it for a couple of years, you know, just to keep me on the straight and narrow, because, you know, again, I was a bit of a hard case in the beginning. I had a lot of false starts, and it's not that I didn't take it seriously. I just didn't appreciate that my life was on the line. I always thought that it'll be fine. You know, like I'm not going to die. Everything's fine. What's everybody getting all worked up about? You know, and the reality is that we do. And the people who die that I've been around are the people who have been sober for a short period of time, or even a long period of time, and then they go back to one more.
Yep.
And they end up dying, and it's because they think they can do one more, and that's the illusion that has been smashed for me. I do not believe I can do one more. I mean, when I go into doctor's offices, I go in to visit, you know, my dentist. I had a lot of dental work in the beginning. You know, it was my sponsor was like, you tell them straight up, you are an addict. That's what you do. And I was very uncomfortable doing that. I'm not going to lie and say that it was, you know, easy peasy for me, but it was what I needed to do. I had to do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, I mean, listen, we're very creative. We're very, you know, like, I mean, we can, you know, look good on the outside and be a mess. I mean, not even a mess, but like a trash pit on the inside. And
manipulation just flow like a waterfall when we're not.
It does.
And it almost doesn't even take any cognition to.
It doesn't.
Happen.
It really doesn't. And so
I can identify for sure.
You know, and you know, and so now, you know, many years later, I mean, my mom will say, you know, especially when I appear to be, you know, I don't want to say struggling, but not, you know, like I'm not myself, and because we all go through, you know, it ebbs and flows, right? And she'll say, gotta get to a meeting. Okay, you got it. Get into a meeting, you know, and so she keeps me accountable, and so does my sponsor, and so, you know, and so do my sponsees, because I'm not going to be that hypocrite.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a hypocrite, because for me, being a hypocrite would be that I might as well just be using.
Sure.
And so, I don't want to be one of those that, do as I say, not as I do, and that's really, really super important to me. And I picked up, for me, the basic text, right away. And I just, kept going through it, kept going through it, kept going through it. And I'll never forget, I was with my sponsor at the time, and we were going over my character defects, and she's got really big boobs. Well, she had really big, she still does, but she laid her hands around, and she goes, I said, I think I have like 3 or 4. And she goes, is that right? Okay, well, we're going to do some work on that. And I'll never forget that moment, because we were sitting in like a Starbucks or something. And for me, a lot of it boils down to, when I'm in fear is when a lot of the character defects come out.
Absolutely.
And so, and fear is a human reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's when, I might dig out, not necessarily my big book or any type of a book, but I might read something or listen. I do a lot of listening in the car. I do a lot of spiritual stuff in the car. I listen to that along with NPR. Oh my. So it gets me to that place where I'm like, if you move a muscle, you change a thought. So you can kind of look at it the same way, right?
Yep.
So I'm moving a muscle in the way that I'm moving my brain muscle. So I'm moving that around, and so I change my thought. And the same can be applied, especially in early recovery. Like if you're feeling squirrely, go for a walk. Go for a walk. Just get out and do something, because I promise you, your mind will change. Your thoughts will change. And I had to, at that time, and this is going back many years ago, I had to call all the doctors that I was seeing, because now they're a lot more strict about this than they were back in the day. I had to call them and tell each one of them that I was an addict. And I remember my sponsor with me, and I like dripping sweat. I was just like, I can't do this. And she's like, yes, you can, because your life depends on it.
Yep.
And that's what I did. And because when you cut the cord, you don't have another opportunity. Or, yes, you always have an opportunity. Listen, I could go up to the 7-Eleven and get something to drink if I wanted to. But, again, there comes the pause. There comes the pause of where's this going to go? Because I already know where it's going to go.
You're eliminating steps. We just did a story with somebody who talked about, Susanna Johnson, who talked about the really cool, one of her guides sat her down and said, listen, everything we do healthfully in the beginning stages of recovery, we're working through the steps and everything, is good. It's the internal work and everything. But then it comes to what you're talking about, is what is your access? What is your path? Who are the playground? What's your playmates? All of those things. And it's those playmates, the steps to access of our drug of choice, that we have to be honest with ourselves, analyze, and then remove those steps. And in some ways, if we can put an added boundary in there for ourselves, and so that definitely looks different for everybody, and
it is, and you're 100% right, Patrick. I mean, it's putting those blockades between the thought and the action.
Yep.
And that's what it's about. And when you said steps, I'm thinking of step work, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be going over to step work. But I mean, I personally have done it so many times that it's second nature to me. So I can tell you, you know, in this moment, what step I'm on. You know what I'm saying? Like, or what I'm thinking. The first, second, and the third step are by far one of the best steps. People, you know, worry about 4 and 5, whatever. You've already done it. 6 and 7 are the ones that kicked my ass. Okay, because I mean, really, they did. Because I realized that, oh my gosh, like I had a lot of a lot of stuff that I needed to work on. And it wasn't, it didn't feel good in the moment. It didn't feel good. And I still to this day have stuff that I need to work on. And that's where again that, you know, comes back to that whack-a-mole, you know, like, okay, put one thing down, something else pops up, you know, whatever. And
Yeah. Well, so kind of to add a little, I don't know, just put a lens all over some of the things that you've talked about and perspective towards the end. I just wanted to add a thought here. You know, in active addiction, we do a lot of, for many of us, our lives, it's been a culmination of reacting, numbing out, or
avoidance.
Something to feel better. And, you know, like you said, avoidance in some cases as well. And, you know, you were talking about fear a minute ago. And what's interesting is that for so many of us, until we get into recovery and we start working through things, it is such a foreign idea to talk about breaking through our feelings, analyzing our feelings, taking inventory of things, understanding the motives behind our behavior and all of that. And so when you talk about fear, as you did, I think many of our viewers may automatically think fear as something I'm scared of, my anxieties. What if such and such happens tomorrow? Which is a great example of fear. However, you know, you were referencing fear and fear-based actions in a way that I just wanted to shed a light on for some people who maybe haven't been there before and processing all of this. You know, our negative behaviors as humans, and especially in addiction, is all based in fear. To break it down, you say, wait, how is it based in fear? Because it's like, I'm not scared of, you know, whatever. It's not that. We talk about fear being the root of all those behaviors, because in its very simplistic form, we're either scared of getting something we believe we don't deserve, or not getting something we believe we deserve. That's the root of fear in its most simple form. So what that means in addiction is that we are scared of feeling reality. We're scared of facing whatever trauma we're not willing to approach. We're scared of acknowledging that I don't remember what it feels like to have a sober thought or sober waking moment. And I don't know, like, I remember thinking I might die. I don't know that I can have a sober moment. So I say that and kind of lay all that out there to as kind of a add-on to what you were talking about with fear-based actions and what have you in addiction, because I kind of wanted to, you know, wrap this up and end in saying that it's no fun to live like that. It's no fun to live in a way where we're constantly either numbing, reacting, or doing anything to avoid an undesired consequence. And so if something that we've talked about today has sparked an interest for you, that you want to seek a better way of life that isn't that, you know, that is of, you know, finally being able to live in reality, grasping hope and joy, seeing those glimpses of peace, then I would encourage you to take advantage of some resources either at the bottom of your screen, Googling for help, and by Googling for help, I mean, get on Google and say, hey, self-help meetings for, you know, I don't know whether you're in Pennsylvania, wherever you are, it's super easy to find, to search and find what local resources are available to you and just uncover a sliver of hope you can potentially reach out and ask for help for. It is super possible. And I just want to encourage anybody who's watching that may be in that place to do so. And, you know, similarly to Melissa's mom back in the day, if you're a parent watching, I would so encourage you to get online and look at what resources are available for you to connect with other parents in the same boat as you, or educate yourself a little bit more on the disease and what perhaps you can do differently. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. Lastly, you know, Melissa, I just wanted to ask you what final thoughts you may have as far as words of encouragement for our listeners. You know, that guy or girl who may be out there that's struggling similarly to how you struggled. What would you say to them today?
Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep trying. Just keep trying. And you know, what's out there today is not what was out there years ago, and you know, it's deadly. I have a funeral dress, really do. But what I'm saying to the viewers is that if you say you scrape your knee, or as I always say, I had a false start. Pick yourself up and do it again. And that's the best thing I can suggest. Just please don't give up.
That's right. I love that. Melissa, thank you so much for spending this time with with us today on this platform, sharing your experience, your journey with everybody. It's an extreme place of vulnerability, but it is one of the most precious ways to spend your time, right? And give back what we've been so freely given. And so I'm grateful for you and your life's journey.
I'm grateful for you. And I'm grateful that you do this to help others, because, you know, as I mentioned, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know. And I didn't have anybody to direct me. So this is, you know, please, you know, this is your direction. This is your divine order.
That's right.
Whatever that looks like.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Melissa, and everyone else for watching today. My last thought I always like to leave everyone with is to remember to be kind to one another and take care of yourselves.